Shogunners is a fun combination of murderous spectacle and XCOM-style strategy tactics. Its presentation feels like something out of a comic book or one of James Gunn's blockbusters. While Shogunner's characterization can't quite match the sense of atmosphere, the turn-based combat manages to be thoroughly engaging. Gameplay is split into two sections, exploration and combat. Exploration has players freely navigating a semi-open area filled with loot, med stations, shop kiosks, traps, and other encounters. Engaging with fans provides fame and personality points, the latter depending on how players sign the autograph. These 2-point systems allow players to unlock sponsorships, some of which require personality requirements to access. You'll spend action points to move around and use your skills. Of course, when you need protection from an explosion or a group of enemies released into an adjacent area, you can sprint to safety, using all your points. Best of all, it never quite feels like the random number generator is testing the limits of your tolerance. What makes Shogunner so addicting is that its combat is tight, responsive, fair, and accessible. The options available to players during combat and exploration are just enough to feel varied without feeling overly complicated. With addicting turn-based combat, interesting characters, and engaging real-time exploration, navigating Shogunner's deadly game show is a blast. Quasam Morph is a classic turn-based roguelike with an extraction twist. You deploy into each mission with your clone, level up and collect equipment, then finish the mission to extract with your clone and loot. It's a fantastic mechanic to add to the roguelike genre and makes for a natural meta progression, while preserving the brutality of classic roguelike games. Equip your high-level clone with all your best equipment only to make a mistake and die. Say goodbye to your gear and your clone. This, combined with other modern roguelike mechanics and an excellent visual aesthetic, makes Quasam Morph one to keep your eye on. Quasam Morph takes inspiration from Stone's Hard with a pain system that applies debuffs on damage received, body part-specific damage, detailed character and enemy sprites that portray different armor and weapons, and light crafting and equipment maintenance mechanics. Another excellent mechanic is the hunger system. Rather than simply being a passive requirement to occasionally eat food, your fullness acts as your energy store, which you can use to take more actions per turn or regenerate health. Overall, Quasam Morph is a cool indie turn-based game with a lot potential and deserves a spot as best turn-based game. Dissidia 7 is a turn-based tactical combat JRPG, which is divided into chapters in which you'll have to defeat enemies on different terrains and in different environmental conditions. You'll be able to take a variety of demons with different classes and abilities into battle to defeat enemies round by round. You'll still be able to throw Prinis, stack crates and use super abilities. With over 40 selectable character classes and numerous side objectives, the gameplay remains exciting even if you repeat a stage. In addition, there are new features such as Hell Mode as one of the most difficult difficulty levels and the possibility of item reincarnation. As for the difficulty level, Dissidia 7 Vows of the Virtueless offers a decent challenge. The battles can be demanding, especially when you venture into the deeper levels. However, there are also ways to adjust the difficulty level if you want it to be easier, by grinding more, taking more care of your characters and repeating stages. This makes the game accessible to both seasoned SRPG veterans and newcomers to the genre. Overall, Dissidia 7 is a fun and tactical turn-based game for JRPG fans. For the King 2 lets you explore procedurally generated worlds in the course of various adventures, alone or with fellow players. At its core, it is a party role-playing game based on classic tabletop with roguelike elements. It is a relaxing turn-based RPG for up to 4 players. The world map is a giant hexagonal grid that you will traverse turn by turn as you complete quests, search for treasure, and take on exponentially increasing threats. My favorite thing about For the King 2 is its quick pace. Combat now takes place on a small grid, and each character is allowed to take a bonus movement action on their turn. This change adds a layer of tactical strategy that wasn't in the original, since enemies will have attacks with different patterns, and heroes have abilities that can buff tiles on your side of the board. It's a unique mix of classic turn-based and tactics-style combat that feels unique to For the King. There's new classes and some added complexity to build crafting that has been interesting to explore. For the King 2 is a roguelike that's just as punishing as the original. Every few turns, the difficulty will increase and all of the monsters on the board will level up. You have to be as efficient as possible, only take fights that will make you stronger, and judiciously decide which goals to pursue. It can be challenging to make the right decisions, especially in a co-op setting, but that's where For the King 2 finds the fun. War Tales is a tactical RPG in a sandbox open world. It has a dark tone and has perma-death mechanics for every member of your mercenary band. War Tales' core gameplay loop involves traveling on a vast map from one key location to another, stopping by a town to recuperate between missions. Players progress the story either by taking up contracts or by buying information from brokers using influence. Quests are mostly completed through combat, which puts the player on a grid-based battlefield. The player's party takes turns with the AI in moving their units and taking action. The game has two separate difficulty settings for its turn-based combat and its survival simulation. Don't be fooled by its drab exterior. War Tales is a deep and richly rewarding exercise in party creation. All in all, it is similar to Battle Brothers and shines with its hard and engaging battles and mercenary management. It's very easy to sink dozens of hours playing this game, but rarely have I played a game that doesn't move much in terms of progression even with that much time investment put into it. It has tons of potential as long as the developers manage to continue iterating the design to make it more engaging. Darkest Dungeon 2 introduces new features while overhauling others. This gives veterans a new challenge to work with while newcomers won't have to worry about playing the original game. Darkest Dungeon 2 has replaced the penalties for failure and perma-death is gone. You get candles after every expedition which unlock new items or grant permanent upgrades to characters and the stagecoach. You also always keep the skills you unlock with every character. There is no situation you can't recover from, and even a short expedition provides resources that go towards new items or upgrades. It helps reframe your failures, making sure you don't lose sight of the bigger goal and encouraging you to keep playing. Your favorite heroes from the first Darkest Dungeon return with a few new additions, but every character has been reworked. It's easy to find an optimal party combination, but it will take some experimentation. Unlocking new skills also opens up more options for a character, giving you access to more strategic combinations. The game rewards creativity and allows several characters to shine. Darkest Dungeon 2 is easily accessible to players who are willing to push past their initial failures. All challenges can be overcome and you are never permanently locked out of victory. The original Wargroove was a breath of fresh air for turn-based strategy fans. Wargroove II splits its campaign mode into 3 different campaigns. Campaign levels do have a tendency to go on longer than they should considering its lack of mid-match saving outside of being able to quit and pick back up where you were later. But when you add in its extra modes, loads of unlockables, an amazing level editor, and it's a game I'm excited to keep playing far past its campaign. In some levels, you will have to do without a way to spawn new units, which would be a far bigger challenge without health potions to top your soldiers off. In others, you can turn basic units of your choice into a sort of mini-commander, equipping them with a weapon that will make them stronger or give them a special attack. Every unit type feels useful in one situation or another, with their utility depending heavily on the layout of the map and the enemies in front of you. The new Conquest mode is a fun extra option that is guaranteed to make you a better tactician, and it's great to see an additional game mode with this much thought put into it. Wargroove II is still one of the best tributes to Advance Wars out there, and bigger than its predecessor in every way, even though otherwise not much has changed. Age of Wonders 4 is a Fantasy 4X with a wonderful magic system. This game is going one step further to provide you a magical sandbox where you can create your starting race similar to Stellaris. By selecting the physical form, traits, cultural leanings, and societal quirks of your people, you are able to create all sorts of unusual empires, from sinister mole people with a penchant for cannibalism to industrious goblins who just want to build epic cities and make new friends. Additionally, you can also feel free to live your creativity in setting up and generating your dream world and scenario you want to play. There's an abundance of pre-made maps, including ones that are part of the story-driven campaign, but you can also spawn your own, selecting its traits. Maybe you want to conquer a frozen wasteland full of monsters, or a fiery hellscape split up by a molten sea, where the only safe route across is underground. There's no dearth of compelling choices here, letting you make all sorts of exotic battlefields. With all the ways you can develop your empire, Age of Wonders 4 demands to be played over and over. But there's also an overarching progression system, the Pantheon, that encourages you to hop back in. Age of Wonders 4 motivates you after many hours of play for experimentation like few other strategy games, seducing you back into trying new tone combos and drag your empire in new, weird directions. Jagged Alliance 3 is a massive modern-day squad tactics RPG with 90s action movie soul. Most of JA2's mercenaries return here, plus a handful of newcomers, which means you'll have a multinational bunch of misfits to pick from. Combat in Jagged Alliance 3 splits the difference between its predecessor's simulation-heavy approach, and modern XCOM's more readable battlefields and systems. Movement is action point-based, affected by agility stats, morale, degree of rest and other factors, but it's visually intuitive. The movement grid shows a blue move radius where you'll have enough AP to shoot from. If you've played a modern tactics game, it's easy to jump in and start, but the process of putting bullets in bad guys is far more granular than a dice roll. The strategic and RPG layers are what really set Jagged Alliance apart. Jagged Alliance 3 has an explorable open world, with towns full of mostly French-accented NPCs, many with side quests. There's diamond mines to capture for income, forts that spawn forces to recapture territories, ports for faster water movement and other strategic concerns. There's a few bolts that could be tightened up here and there, but Jagged Alliance 3 is back in business and a great turn-based title. Baldurs Gate 3 is a game about making choices. It exerts enough control over the play experience that it never feels like an empty sandbox. It's more than a blank page and a pen that leave the responsibility of making entertainment up to the audience's own creativity. The player is allowed to shape the fine details of their journey through the game, but Larian Studios is in charge of what they'll see and do along the way. Find the player character tasked with retrieving an important item locked away in a well-guarded room and it's possible to sneak into, retrieve it, perhaps lie effectively enough to be granted entry, or, once again, simply turn everything surrounding that protected room into a bloodbath. It also is a kind of game where showing off the complexity of the combat system is the point. The issue here is that while the combat system is complex, it's also unforgiving. If you're not always using every single spell, item, and bonus action you have to defeat the enemy characters, you're probably going to lose. Baldurs Gate 3 is a masterpiece built on an old-school tabletop game and gives you an exceptional turn-based RPG.